Hey, what's up everyone? Today we're going to be going over the Sony FX3. Now, today is going to be a little bit different. I'm not even going to try to explain some of the specs on this because you've already seen this camera before. It's basically a Sony A7S III. You've already heard that, but internally it's the exact same. And the photo quality you get out of it, the video quality, the dynamic range, low light performance, everything you're getting inside this camera is what you get out of an A7S III. The chassis of it is definitely different. Its manufacturing, its uses are definitely different as well, and some of the features you get external. So the biggest thing that you notice right off the bat is there's no electronic viewfinder that you get in A7S III, so you don't get this one, but you do get your flip out screen. So a lot of videographers, you don't typically need to have a viewfinder up in your face. It's nice to have this little screen, but you do get a lot of mounting options as well for brighter monitors because this one is not the brightest. So there's situations where you can see that an EVF does come in handy, like right behind camera. It's kind of bright outside now. So Todd was actually able to put his face up to see if everything's working properly to the EVF. So that's when you do want to mount a monitor that is a lot more bright than the one that already comes with attached. We do get a lot of Q20 mounting options on the top, the side, and the bottom. So one on the bottom, one on the left side, 3 on the top, and then 1 on the right side. Sony is saying that this camera is being made so you don't have to put a cage around it and really rig it up that way, but you can mount everything externally. And just having this camera in my hands, I see a lot of potential from manufacturers such as SmallRig, Tilta, Shape, to come up with accessories for this and not necessarily have to have a cage. So I can already see a side handle being taken advantage on the side right here. Some really nice top mounting points for either monitors or something to mount your microphone or anything like that. Now, the exterior button layout is going to be different as well. That's going to be the most notable. And if you already are a Sony shooter, it's a little frustrating first out of the box. And what I mean by frustrating is that our front dial on the front of the camera on the shutter button is actually not where you would switch on your camera on and off like you did in previous alpha cameras, but it's actually a zoom button. So if you're using a lens that can zoom electronically, or if you're using clear image zoom, you can actually use this to toggle the zoom. Now, the clear image zoom is going to be it's going to come in handy when you're doing video with prime lenses. So right now I'm using a 24-1.4 millimeter, and I can actually toggle this to clear image zoom only. And I don't have to mess with anything, just this little toggle switch, which is really nice. And you can actually set the speed in the menu. So if I'm zooming in, either in standby or record, I have 1 through 8 for speed, slowest to fastest. And when I'm zooming out, same exact thing, 1 through 8, slowest to fastest. So that's a feature that at first I was, keep trying to flip my camera on, and it got a little frustrating, but it's just something you're gonna have to learn. Another button that's a little frustrating to me is on the back side we have our mode and menu. Typically where the mode button is where the menu button used to be. So I keep clicking mode thinking I'm diving into the menus, but I'm not. So that's something that's a little flip-flop you have to get used to. And then also the power button's a little bit different. So 2 previous things I mentioned were the things that are a little frustrating. These that I'm gonna say now are just what's different. So the power button as well, it's not a toggle like flip switch on the top. It's actually on the back side right above the LCD screen. I like the design of it. It feels really good, flipping on and off. It's not gonna slip, it's pretty firm. On the back side, we have a lot more custom buttons layout for videographers, and even your function menu is a little bit differently designed than straight out the box of an A7S III. So on the back side, and I'm a huge fan of this, our control dial wheel doesn't have to do anything with being a photography camera. So like I said, it's more video oriented. So I can actually toggle my peaking on and off with the custom button on the right side of the dial, and then zebras on the left dial. Your display, of course, is going to be cycled through the up dial. So I'm a huge fan of having the peaking and zebras have a specific button on the control wheel on the back side because you're able to toggle it on and off very fast. Now, I know in other cameras, you could probably custom set it to, custom 1, custom 2. And I might be just lazy, but myself, I never set custom buttons for the most part. So being able to just toggle peaking on, check that, everything's in focus, and then turn my zebras on, making sure that everything's, exposed properly, and then be able to toggle that off so I can focus on the image that's in front of me. That's just a phenomenal feature, and I really like how Sony redesigned this layout. On the top of the camera as well, we do have our custom button 1 controls the iris, custom button 2 is white balance, and then custom button 3 is going to be automatically your ISO. Those are 3 things that, you know, I don't have to dive into the function menu even, and it just takes out one less step and makes the shooting experience a lot more pleasable. We also have a really big record button that does light up, and then we also are, I guess if you want to call it your thumb control, isn't on the back side, so it is a little different. It is on the top. I'm probably not going to use this too much, just its placement's a little awkward, but something to be in mind. Now, speaking of the record button, we actually do get 3 different tally lights. So the record button itself is going to light up red. We have a tally light right on the front corner, so someone, you know, in front of the camera can see when we're recording. And then on the back side between the mode and the menu button, we also get a tally light. You can go into the menus and turn these off, or you can turn one or the other on. So really nice to have that, just to be aware that you're recording. And you can actually emphasize the recording on the back LCD screen, even if you're the shooter, to have it red on the outside. And then another thing that I do want to note on, just really quick, is our custom 6 button on the front can obviously be programmed, but that also is a record button as well. So if you have the camera front facing, it's not that hard to press on the top, but if you do have something in the way, like maybe a cage down in the road or something to where on the top it's not accessible, you can always hit that on the front side to start recording your video. Now, that's just going over some of the buttons and the different layouts that you do get on this camera. This camera feels phenomenal in my hand. The overall size of it, I shoot with a Sony FX3, so I can't take that camera with me to majority of places. So when something like that's rigged up, you definitely get stares when you're just trying to shoot something, even if it's for fun. Having something this size and pairing it with a small enough lens, you can throw this in a backpack. It's definitely not pocketable size, but in a backpack's gonna be great. So if you're going on trips or you're looking for like a really solid, I don't wanna call this a B camera, but if you're looking for a solid compact camera, this I think should definitely be on your list. Other than that, I mean, it being not an alpha camera, having the X series, so like the X6, the X9, gives it this really beautiful gray color, and I'm really happy to see Sony keep that. Now, obviously it doesn't affect anything, but hey, it's cool looking as well. We also do get different ventilation systems. So if you look on the bottom of the camera, we do have a pretty big vent right under the LCD screen. If you don't keep the fan on, you're gonna get the same heat dissipation that you get with the Sony A7S III, which is already phenomenal by itself. So you can toggle that on and off in the menus, but we do get a little bit more ventilation in this camera. So that's all the stuff I want to go over today. Very excited to have this camera in my hand. As soon as it was announced, I threw getting an A7S III out the window for personal use. So this is going to be my next purchase. So I'm rambling now. We're going to get into shooting here in downtown Austin. Going to get you a lot of video, hopefully, and see what you think. And I just forgot, last but not least, you do get also, it's not an additional purchase, but inside is this little top handle that screws into the top, sits in the hot shoe, screws in there, the mounting points, but it's also the K3M basically. One thing to note though, you are getting this audio interface, but unlike the K3M, it does not come with the microphone. So that is an additional purchase you're just gonna have to be aware of. Ergonomics of this is phenomenal. I was actually talking to Josh earlier at my house today, and he was just saying like, he would love shooting like skateboarders with this, just because this balanced on the camera just fits really well inside your hands, and it's really easy to put on. You just kind of slide it in there, and then I tied in the mounting points, and it's just very well balanced overall. I wish that they made this handle without this audio interface on top, just to keep it a little bit smaller, because personally, I'm probably not going to record into the camera very much in terms of audio, especially with a shotgun mic, but that's just something I think that another manufacturer will come out with, like Tilta or someone like that. But that was the last thing. Now really, we're going to get into shooting. We just got finished shooting a ton of video. Well, depends what if you think that's a ton, but I felt like it was a ton. But yeah, we just got shooting downtown, had a lot of fun with this camera. And I'm gonna give you final thoughts and tell you why I had a lot of fun with it. So one of the reasons why I love shooting with this camera so much is the top handle. Even though we weren't using the audio inputs, just the overall ergonomics of holding it. So when I was following Valen, when we were going like down the staircase, or there was another instance where I was following her and I just kind of had it gripped right here in between my fingers, really well balanced. And it helped so I didn't have to get all the way down and I can get those long angle shots that I was really trying to get. Grip of the camera felt awesome. I love the clear image zoom, and I do want to touch on that a little bit more. So what I was mentioning earlier is that other cameras do have this feature, but they don't have the little dial up here, which makes it very, very easy to use. So there were some instances where Valen was, I was doing a close-up of her basically when I had the 24 first on, and I was like, this doesn't quite look how I want it to look. So then I was able to zoom in with that 1.5 crop. I believe it was a 1.5 crop, and get close to something like a 35, and that was the exact look I was going for. The mode menu was very, very easy to navigate through. I know I didn't mention it earlier, but this is all fully touchscreen optional. So when I was able to put it in mode, go to the S&Q mode, I'm just able to kind of just scroll up with my finger, put it in S&Q mode. I was able to set it to 120 frames per second, already interpolated to 24 in the camera. And I was actually able to do the same for 60 frames per second. And guys, those are all 4K still. 4K 60 with no crop whatsoever. And then the 4K 120, I believe, is a 1.1 crop around that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's phenomenal on today's standards even. There is another mode that I didn't touch on in the very beginning of the video that I kind of want to talk about, and I'm not too entirely sure what it does, but you do have two exposure modes when you're doing video. You have flexible exposure mode, and then you just have full manual mode. Manual mode is something that I'm used to where I can either do program, aperture priority, shutter priority, and then just full manual. But the flexible exposure mode has a weird play on the buttons you have on the top. So like iris, ISO, and then our front wheel and back dial. From what I understand, and once again, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you can toggle them on and off to lock either your iris or your shutter by long pressing the buttons. Now, that is the way to be able to use the ISO mode for custom function 3. It was just a little finicky when I was using it, just because I feel like I didn't fully understand it, but that's something that you should know about the camera, and that it offers that. And when I changed it to manual, well, now it was a little bit more difficult for me to actually find the ISO, because when I put it into manual, for some odd reason, when I was pressing the function 3 button, which is labeled ISO, it wasn't flipping to my ISO to mess with. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. And if you do know a little bit more about that, let me down in the comments. I haven't seen anybody online talk too much about this, so I'd love to see what y'all think of that. Now, I didn't mention this earlier, but the IBIS in this camera is a lot better than something like the A7C, although I felt like the ergonomics were very similar. IBIS mounds better than something like the A7C. Overall, happy with that. I mean, you get the awesome facial tracking, you get the awesome video mode, shooting in all intra, you get that in a small compact body with a lot of mounting ports, and it's really designed for videographers in mind, and that's something that I'm really appreciative to have in this camera. So I give it 2 thumbs up, really happy with it. And let me know what you think. If you're gonna pick up an FX3, what you're excited about, what you wish that Sony might have included in this. There's nothing really in this camera that I'm disappointed about, other than it took me a little bit to get used to on confusing that with the on and off button. But other than that, there's nothing really that I could find. So, like I said, let me know, share, like, and subscribe, and we'll see you on our next video.